This list is calling me out. Is that a cop out? Epic Reads, are you copping out? Okay, good. I was going to freak out if one of her books didn't make this list. And okay, I'm sorry. I just looked at the 36 book and I'm so excited because that happens a lot with these books where it's like, okay, everyone loved it, but what if I hate it? Oh well, hello friends. Welcome back to another video. This video is going to be very chaotic. I don't know if you can tell, but I moved. I'm in a new space now. My Patreon's got a first look at everything. The new space and unpacking and all the craziness. Like right now, behind me, my bookshelves. Hot mess. I would expect nothing less of me. But if you haven't read the title of today's video, I'm going to be reacting to Epic Reads YA contemporary list of books you should read during Black History Month. So happy Black History Month, guys. I love this month in particular just because obviously like Black love every day of the year, but I feel like just collectively as a community it's so fun to see everyone pushing content and like pushing Black love and just thoughtfulness of other cultures and stuff. Like I love it. Same way I love the Asian Readathon, Blackathon. I'm participating in that and I will be uploading vlogs for it. I missed the first week because I'm moving. It's crazy. It's a crazy time. That's why the lighting's all weird, but it's okay. We are going to be reacting to this list and I'm going to tell you some books that I would also recommend, books that are missing on this list, books I would skip. I'm assuming that I've read most of these. I love contemporary. Like YA contemporary is like one of my favorite genres. It's also thought-provoking because everyone's experience is different and I just have such a warm experience for it. So let's get to this reaction, shall we? I'm sure there are going to be other books that I'm going to want to add to this list, but I'm really nervous to see what Epic Reads has to say. So the title of this article, and I'll link it down below, it is 54 YA books you need to read, especially during Black History Month. But I also like that it's like you should also read it every month. It is a little cute little sentence of it. Okay, now let's go down this list and see what they suggest. Number 1 on the list, The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which I agree everyone should read, but I think I even made a whole video about this, that this ends up being the pinnacle of a YA Black book, which, you know, I agree with to an extent. I feel like this is a experience and an experience that a lot of people talk about, especially in literature, being a Black person in a really white environment, which is probably a lot of people's experience, but it's not the only experience. So I kind of expected this to be number 1, but I personally in my head don't think it is number 1 because I think there are also a lot of people with different experiences. So this is good. Make sure you pair it with a different book. This is actually hilarious that Concrete Rose is 2. Besides the fact that the first and second slot are by the same author, hilarious. But also, I actually like Concrete Rose better. You heard it right, folks. I really enjoyed Concrete Rose. I think it touches upon a lot of issues that we don't talk about in society. But I love that we focus on the humanity of Maverick, of the trials and tribulations of being a young dad. I feel like, though maybe not a lot of people can relate to this, I feel like we can all relate to wanting more of life, not feeling like you're enough, which is definitely a Maverick story, and it just touches my soul, and I cried so much during this one. I actually think I like it more than The Hate You Give, so I highly recommend Concrete Rose. It's so good. Ooh, okay. Punching the Air by Ibi Zavoy and Yusef Salom, which if you don't know, Yusef Salom was wrongly accused and imprisoned, and this is kind of a take on his story written with Ibi Zavoy, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing style was great. It does miss that element where you feel the personal connection, because this is obviously a story about a man who is accused and sent to prison. So don't come into this book expecting to be seen or anything. This is truly someone else's story, and they're sharing their experience and how hopeless it can be and how people don't believe you, and it can be really detrimental. And I think it's a very empowering story that we all could read. So I highly recommend, but don't look at this book and be like, I didn't feel personally connected. I think I wrote that in my view, and I think people should know this isn't a book that everyone will be connected to. This is a learning experience, and there are sirens. but I 100% recommend this book. It's so good. Ooh, next is Blackout by a bunch of authors, a bunch of my personal favorite authors like Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, tons of amazing authors. This one, I'm gonna say not a must. If we're really truly trying to pick out the must reads, definitely read it if you like short stories, if you like short stories based in New York, all about love and romance. I particularly loved, I think, Angie Thomas's story in there. Oh my god, she's like the queen in this video, because her love story wasn't your necessarily like classic romance story. I like how romance was talked about throughout all the short stories in this, but it is like a 3-star book, so I don't think it's a must unless you are looking for some really fun, quirky short stories to read. Ooh, okay, so I haven't read Happily Ever Afters. I definitely need to. I know everyone raves about it. I actually have a Kindle version of this book. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So the first one that I haven't read. I feel like some of these books I will have read and won't, so it's interesting. I want to see also how many I have and haven't read. I'll keep like a little tally too, because this is my favorite genre, so it'd be really depressing if I haven't read most of these books. Wouldn't that be funny? Okay, and then number 6 is her second release, One True Loves. One True Loves? Plural? Oh, I think we're talking about a love triangle in this. Ooh, yeah, I definitely need to read her books. I am behind. Third book, oh no, I jinxed myself, is Blackbirds in the Sky. Brandy Colbert's work is amazing. I've read 2 of her books. I still need to read Little and Lion and clearly Blackbirds in the Sky. I feel like a lot of YA contemporary authors, especially Black authors, are like pumping out books so often, like Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Brandy Colbert, every year. Tiffany D. Jackson, they're like cranking out so many books. I'm like so proud of them, honestly. Ooh, okay, another one I haven't read. The Song of Wrath and Ruin. Ooh, I've like totally jinxed myself, because also the 9th book is the sequel to that series. This list is cheating by listing out the first in the series and the second together. How rude. Okay, excuse me while I ugly cry. I also have to read that. I also have a Kindle version of it. Ooh, this is so funny. Okay, The Upward World. Ooh, that's really exciting. I have actually never heard of this book. I'm surprised, because I was really expecting this to only be bestsellers and things like that, so I'm actually very excited. I will put this in my TBR. I'm not trying to buy new books right now, but I will put it on my TBR because it's interesting. I didn't know. I gotta check it out and see why Epic Reads recommends it. The 12th book, okay, this one I have read, but I DNF'd it, and that is Kingdom of Souls. So I enjoyed this book for the most part. I think it just wasn't for me, the writing style. This girl is a part of this crazy family of witch doctors, and it's just, it literally gets crazy. But I read 200 pages of it, and to me the story was very much like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to defeat the monster, I need to do this. To me, I don't really like stories that are like that, but if you really like stories with really like heavy magic, you'll definitely like this, because there's some really cool magical stuff in here. But personally, the writing style wasn't for me, just because it wasn't engaging, because I was like, just beat the monster already. I wanted more action, and that's probably what's going to happen more so in the sequel than the first book, but I'm not going to pick up the sequel. Is it a must read? Yes, if you like a lot of heavy magical fantasy stuff, then it's probably a must read for you. For me, not so much. Okay, 14. We have Tiffany D. Jackson, Grown, which is a favorite. Oh my god, they keep having like the same author, like a list of their books afterwards, because number 15 is Let Me Hear a Rhyme, which is also amazing, by Tiffany D. Jackson. Firstly, Grown, I think it's great if you are okay with the trigger warnings of like grooming and things like that. It's about a girl who wants to be a musician, and this really famous rapper, MC, kind of takes her on and like literally takes legal responsibility for her and takes her away from her family and kind of like kidnaps her. Very interesting story, but Tiffany D. Jackson has such a way with words. She's definitely a favorite author of mine. Same with Let Me Hear a Rhyme. Super good. I really connected with it, even though I'm not a music person, and I don't listen to music on the regular. I'm not that girl, but the way that she made me care for these kids who are basically trying to preserve their friend's memory and love for music who had passed. So they go out of their way and take his like mixtape and try and push it. And it is a more of a period piece. It's based in 1998, I believe. And they're pushing his music even though he's passed away at this point, just to kind of keep his spirit and soul alive. And it's just very touching, but it is also very heartbreaking. The next one is another Tiffany D. Jackson book, White Smoke. I haven't read it yet. I'm a little scared. This is her first horror book and I'm not a horror reader, so I haven't read this yet. But Out of Grown and Let Me Hear a Rhyme, I don't know if I'd actually say those are must reads. I say Let Me Hear a Rhyme is definitely more so like Angie Thomas's work and things like that, where it talks a lot about character, life, death, a lot of really deep topics. And Grown talks about a very specific event that happens to a girl that's very tragic. Kind of, I don't want to say it's like a warning, but it's just a different story to be told. And okay, another Angie Thomas book on the come up. It's number 17. Again, I don't personally think this is a must read. It talks again a lot about music. It's very much like Let Me Hear a Rhyme, slightly different in the sense of this girl wants to be a big rapper. I'm so excited for the movie to come out though. I'm hyped. But this is more so I thought was like a humorous read. I really enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of enjoyment. But a must read. And it's interesting that all the music ones are kind of together. Let Me Hear a Rhyme, Grown, On the Come Up. Those are all very music heavy stories. Okay, number 18. Where the Rhythm Takes You. I actually got an ARC for this and I still haven't read it. It's supposed to be a second chance romance story. I need to read it. A fun little romance, of course, is probably a must read. I just need to get on it. Okay, 19. Haven't read it. Within These Wicked Walls. Oh, I've heard it and I don't know if I'm interested in it per se, but again, to each their own. It has some magical elements. It seems interesting, but I don't like want to purchase it just because it's a new release. I'm like, I'll wait. Okay, 20, Dread Nation, which I have read by Justina Ireland. I think it's a fun story. I don't know, again, like, do you really need to read this like during Black History Month? Is it a must read? If you really like, I think, historical fiction with a hint of fantasy. So this is during the Civil War, zombie apocalypse strikes. A very interesting concept in my opinion. I did enjoy the first book. I gave it like a 4-star, but I didn't continue on with the series because again, it was fun, but not like a necessity. But it was definitely fun if you like kind of historical events and badass girls. This is the story for you. And then of course 21 is the sequel to this. I feel like this list is cheating me because it's not giving me individual books, like individual 54 books. It's using series. Is that a cop-out? Epic Reads, are you copping out? Okay. Oh, 22 by my favorite author, Renee Watson, is Love is a Revolution, which definitely wasn't a favorite of mine. I definitely like Piecing Me Together a lot more. Her original book, or not her original, her debut book. I recommend that book so often because I think it was the first time I really had my experience in a book per se. But Love is a Revolution is also still really well written, but it is about a girl who doesn't believe in herself and lies a lot to others because all of her friends are, you know, really into woke culture and like stop using plastic water bottles and all that stuff, and she doesn't feel like them. She doesn't feel smart enough. She doesn't feel enough to be with these people, so she lies and she starts faking it. Love is a Revolution, I think, will hit a lot of people differently. If you really align with her, you are going to be like, wow, I feel seen. I should love myself and know that I'm enough and that I'm worthy of love. Such an important conversation. I definitely think it is a must read, but I don't know if you should purchase this book just in case. Like, just get it from your library, test it out first before buying it, because I thought it was good, but I personally, like, the main character, she wasn't giving. She was lying so much, and I'm like, there are other cute boys at your school, right? But that's just me being a pessimist, maybe. Moving on to 23. A Sitting at St. James. Oh, interesting. This is again another historical fiction piece. I actually haven't read this, so again, I'm happy this list is introducing some new books to me. I'm adding it to my TBR. Definitely not purchasing it anytime soon. Oh, same with 24 Witches Steeped in Gold, which I know Jessie from Botes and Books, they really enjoyed this. I want to read it, but okay, I can't justify spending all this money on new releases, guys, because it came out last. The chaos that is this video, this battery is gonna die any second, so I guess we're taking a quick coffee break in the middle of my video. How do you feel about this list? We're halfway through it. Well, hello, we are back. Battery's charged a little bit, like 30 minutes worth. We'll see what happens, but let's get back to this epic reads list, reacting to what are the must reads, what aren't. And I'm very surprised so far with the list that it hasn't been all bestsellers, but at the same time so many of them are best-selling books. So let's get into it. Oof. Okay, the 25th book, we're almost halfway through the list, is The Black Kids, which I actually haven't read. I know this was really popular last year, again with like the best-selling books and things like that. I've heard amazing things about this book, but I personally haven't read it, so I can't like recommend it or not, but I definitely know it was a hyped book. A lot of people talk about it. This next book, 26, is Not So Pure and Simple, which is hilarious because that's been on my TBR for so long, and I'm really hoping to get to it this month. I think the last week of Blackathon, I'm really gonna try and hammer out a lot of my YA contemporary books that I haven't gotten to, that I've been wanting to for so long. This, I feel like, is an underrated book in a sense. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. It sounds really fun about a boy who likes a girl and ends up trying to get to know her more by going to like church camp with her and ending up promising to swear like their virginity, you know, like a promise ring, like the Jonas Brothers, like a whole moment. It sounds hilarious. I'm really excited for this book, and I've also heard a lot of good things about the author, so I'm excited for this. I again don't know if it's a must read. This is another contemporary I really want to read that's been on my bookshelf, and I wouldn't call this one totally underrated. I have heard reviewers mention it, but it's one of the good ones. This is definitely your classic like trauma story, whereas Not So Pure and Simple was more about like love. This one is about a teen activist whose sister is killed, and it talks a lot about her perspective. And I think one of the good ones is like, you know, that phrase where you're good for being a black person kind of thing. I think that's the vibe it's giving off. So probably a good read for this month to talk about those things. I am of the opinion that you should be reading books that feature trauma and love, like a good balance, because life has both, and you can't over romanticize because then you could be neglecting the reality, and then when reality strikes it's a lot and you can't handle it. Or if you read too much trauma, then you lack love in your life and things like that. So a good balance is really important. I also apologize for the lighting. Maybe it's adding an effect to this video, maybe not. Ooh, another Brandy Colbert book, The Voting Booth. I actually haven't read this, and I have the audiobook for it, so I feel like I should just read it so I know what it's about. I feel like Brandy Colbert, again, classic YA contemporary author, just comes to my head all the time, so definitely should read it. And it's about voting, which is important. Ooh, the next one, The Field Guide to the North American Teenager. Another book that I definitely need to read, that I have zero thoughts on, but this one I know is definitely a very hyped book. I know a lot of booktubers recommended it when it was released. It's won awards. Ooh, Felix Ever After was one of those books that I really wanted to read, but then some reviews came out that it was like, he is unlikable in a sense. I don't know. I'm not gonna throw it out there. This is a love story from a transgender black queer person, so I think obviously very important, but I don't know if I'll get to it anytime soon. It's been on my radar for so long, but I feel like this is also a very popular book. Like a lot of people were talking about it when it came out. So 31, Black Enough, edited by Evie Zaboy, but also by a ton of authors. This one I did enjoy. I think this is a really good book to have like for like high school and things like that, so you just get to know a lot of different authors, but is it a must read for me? No. Like, I read it, I thought it was a 3-star. I am unhauling it because I don't think I'd ever reread it, but there's some good stories in there and some not so special stories. Must read, hit or miss. This list is calling me out. 32 is Monster, which surprisingly I have not read yet. I know. I feel like I was a little late into reading and all that stuff. I became like an avid reader maybe like 3 years ago, so even though I've read, I feel like a decent amount of this list. A lot of the popular books, honestly, I've read a lot, but there's some classics there where it's not a real classic, but it's like a classic YA contemporary. It probably came out like 5 some years ago, Monster, and I think it's about, let's see, let me read, because it literally says it and I don't know why I don't ever just read. Let's see. Coming of age story, teenager awaiting a trial of a murder and a robbery. Ooh, so probably gonna talk a lot about trauma. Ooh, the 33rd book is Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, which I highly recommend. We have a black boy growing up in London, kind of just coming out of his shell, and very much like the Black Flamingo, rare, exotic, but like, don't put that energy on someone. Like, someone owning their uniqueness and living to their truest self is so different than, oh my god, you're so special, like, let me touch your hair, you're so different. You know what I mean? That's the energy. So I feel like this was such a like empowering book, and it's written so well. It's written in free verse, so it's very poetic, but it still tells a story. Very good. Highly recommend. I'm glad to see this on this list. I do feel like it was a very popular book, but not as popular as it should be. More people should be talking about it. Okay, 34, Charming as a Verb by Ben. Oh, this one was the author of, not the last book, but what was his first? His debut was the Field Notes of a North American Teenager. I'm referring to the computer because I don't remember all these book titles. This was his second book, which I have read and I did enjoy. I had some hang-ups on it, but it was okay because overall it really tackles, you know, love, kind of comedic sense, but also the pressures of being a teenager and trying to get into a good college, and how it does feel very, very, very skewed. A system that's kind of against people who are from marginalized communities. We're often told, like, oh, you have an easy leg up, you can get into any college you want, but it's like, no, actually there's still only like 2% of like college applicants are black, and it's very, very slim pickings, and it's hard. And I think the book does a good job really getting to know the characters and their flaws, and just bringing so much like happiness and joy and just so much humor, which makes me want to read the Field Notes of a North American Teenager. I feel like it's going to be a funny read. This author, I think, does funny very well. This is a book I haven't read, but I really need to. It's the 35th book, and it's Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I've heard only good things about this book, but I'm like, now I'm terrified because what if I don't like it? That happens a lot with these books, where it's like, okay, everyone loved it, but what if I hate it? I'm hoping to tackle this book either this month or next, because I've had it for so long, and I know the sequel just came out. Okay, I'm sorry. I just looked at the 36th book, and I'm so excited because this is a book I find that so underrated, and it's Pride by Ibi Zoboi. I think Ibi Zoboi is an underrated YA contemporary author. Okay, 44 is Buried Beneath the Bad Tree. I'm so sorry, I can't say that correctly. I'm a troll. I have seen some people talk about this book, not too many, but I'm excited for it. I probably should. I'm glad it's on my radar now. Now I'm thinking about it. Ooh, and 45 is Early Departures by Justin A. Reynolds. Again, very much looking forward to this. His writing style is very cool, and the speculative fiction, super fun. Thank you. Oh my god, it took 46 to get to Nick Stone, one of my favorite authors. Dear Martin and literally Dear Justice, which is 47 on the list, are like my favorite books, because Nick Stone's writing, the way she tackles really serious issues, but also the parallel of Dear Martin to Dear Justice, such an important conversation. I talked earlier about Angie Thomas and how it's one person's experience. I really feel like Dear Martin is kind of similar in the sense where it's one person's experience, going to a private school, trying to get into an Ivy League college, university. Like, that's a very niche experience, and I like how Nick Stone took that and actually, you know, flipped it and went on the reverse side. So in Dear Martin, Justice is writing to Martin Luther King for advice, and in Dear Justice, Quan, I think is his name, it's probably like Laquan. Laquan is writing to Justice about, like, how did we grow up in the same... These two stories are ones I highly recommend because I feel like they really show two experiences that happen every day with, like, black men who experience police brutality. It's so important, and to have both stories. Not everyone is trying to get into an Ivy League school. Some people are just trying to survive, and I think that's the really cool thing about Nick Stone and how she listens to her audience, and she decided to write this story about his perspective that isn't talked about very much. Same with, like, Punching the Air. So I would definitely say a must read. 100%. 100%. Okay, good. I was going to freak out if one of her books didn't make this list, and it is 48, which is Now That I've Found You by Christina Forrest. Christina Forrest, the queen. Best romance for YA. I love it so much. It's so fun. It talks about life and dreams and goals and love, and it's so much fun. Especially this one, it talks a lot about Hollywood and this girl wanting to be a star and being betrayed by her friend. Dramatic, fun, just like an overall great time. Okay, 49. We're getting to the end here. The Revolution of Birdie. Ooh, by Brandy Colbert. I didn't read this one either. There's so many Brandy Colbert books that I haven't read. She is the master of cranking out YA, and I need to catch up. Number 50, I also haven't read. It's When You Look Like Us, which has been on my list. I think it's literally on my Amazon wish list. I want to read it, but I don't want to pay for it. So when I get my library card, I'm totally gonna do it. It's gonna happen. I really want to read this book. Smash It by Francina Simone, which is a booktuber here. I don't know if she's an author tuber or a booktuber, but just a fun book. I personally don't know too much about it. Probably should. It's probably a fun book. Ooh, 52, Daughters of Jubilation. That's really cool. I feel like this is an underrated book. I personally haven't read it, but it's been recommended to me by one of my friends here on BookTube, Vina. She gifted it to me, actually. I'm very grateful, and I'm hoping to read it. I don't know if I'm going to get to it during this Blackathon because I do have so many books that I need to catch up on. But it's on the list, and I'm so excited for it. So this is a story about the Jim Crow South, and I believe these sisters have a little bit of magic. It's a little bit of speculative fiction, but it is also talking about Black history. So I think this would be a really good read for this month because it probably talks about a lot of real world issues that had happened and that are happening. You feel me? Okay, 53. We're down to the last two books. The Summer of Everything by Julian Winters. I'm ashamed to say that I haven't read Julian Winters' book. I need to get on it. I know he writes great, fun stories about love. And to be honest, I don't even know what The Summer of Everything's about, but I'm glad he's on this list because I feel like he is underrated. Last book I actually have started reading, and I just haven't finished it yet because I think it does focus a lot more on Black trauma, which... How many times will my camera die during a video? Who knows? Talking about the last book, the 54th book. Wow, that's a lot of books. This Is My America by Kim Johnson. I did actually start reading this, and I did enjoy it, but it definitely is talking about Black trauma. It starts off with this girl on the news, and it's supposed to celebrate her brother, but then she brings it back to the case of her father. Her father is arrested and is being accused of a murder, or I forget exactly what crime, and it's just talking about that. The justice system, incarcerations, and things like that. So I need to read this, but I've been trying to balance my trauma reading and my Black love reading, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. I can make a whole video about that if you want. But yeah, a good balance. So I just haven't finished it yet, but I definitely should. I'm going to balance the fantasy and the YA contemporary that focuses on, you know, love and, well, not trauma, but history, about individual stories that can have a lot of trauma. So that is the 54 books that Epic Reads recommends us to read during Black History Month or every month. I really appreciate that they did that and they said that, because a lot of us Black booktubers and things like that always talk about how people get real vocal during this month. Companies, like, I don't want to name names, but companies will use that, same with like Pride Month, as a marketing scheme to seem very inclusive. So just us regular people every day reminding people like, hey, you don't have to wait till February to be excited. You don't have to wait till Pride Month to be excited and to educate yourself and to be well informed. But yeah, I did want to say overall, a great list of books to read. I don't really think all of them are must reads, and I do think this list is heavily focused on best-selling books. There's a lot of books that I would recommend. Let me see if I can pull some off my bookshelves right now that I'm like, you should check this out too. I'll be right back with that, and I'll also calculate how many I've read, how many I haven't read. Okay, let's talk about how many books on this list that I've actually read. I'm embarrassed because it's less than half, but it's still an impressive amount. It is 23. So I've read 23 out of the 54 books that were recommended. Again, a lot of them are popular releases, and a lot of this list had like sequels on it, which I do think is a little bit cheating, because instead of putting a different series and acknowledging another author, you're just repeating that, oh, this series has a sequel out that you could read. A little bit cheating if I do say so myself, but I'm mildly impressed. I did have a stack of books that I quickly wanted to recommend to you if you like these kind of book recommendations, especially for Black History Month, because I think the thing is, like, obviously every month you can read Black lit or lit that isn't based in the Western world, but sometimes it's hard to find good recommendations. So I have more for you. Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. First, for any of you guys who really love fantasy, I do highly recommend Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko, and there is a sequel out already. It is a really cool magical world. You really grow up with the characters. There's a council that dictates this country, Council of 11, and this young girl, Tarisai, is trying to get on to this council, but maybe not for the best reasons. I don't really want to spoil anything too much, but she is, you know, not who she says she is, and she ends up having to try and kill someone, just a little cute gem. Definitely check it out if you like fantasy, if you like political intrigue, if you like a little bit of romance in your fantasy, and if you like just really big lavish worlds. Like if you like Children of Blood and Bone, I think you're definitely gonna like this, because there's some travel and magical elements just really embedded into the story. I guess this list is young adult, but I also would categorize middle grade with young adults sometimes, because these guys are like in middle school, so I feel like a lot of people who would like the YA listed would also like these two. The next one I want to mention that I highly recommend to a lot of people, and this one does talk a lot about trauma and self-hate. The book is The Skin I'm In by Sharon G. Flake. I really enjoyed this book. It is a lot about self-love. She gets bullied a lot for her hair and her skin color, and there's a new companion novel. I'm so excited. I haven't read this one, The Life I'm In, but I know it's going to be good, so highly recommend this. The other middle grade or author in general that I would recommend is Kekla Magoon. What a great contemporary author that I do think is so underrated. I really enjoyed The Rock and the River, which talks about a boy who's growing up in a family where his dad was working with Martin Luther King very much for the civil rights movement, and then his older brother joined the Black Panthers, which, you know, is two very different ways of looking at the issue, but we talk about it, and I think that's such an interesting conversation to have, especially as a young person, and how it went down. Light It Up, is that what it's called? Yeah, Light It Up. All great books. Kekla Magoon makes a lot of great YA contemporary that makes you think about real world issues. I'm really surprised this list didn't have any Jacquline Woodson on it. Like, you talk about young adult YA, like, authors, and you don't mention Jacquline Woodson? How odd. But I would recommend Harbor Me, which is more so a middle grade story about kids who are in a special needs class, and they just start talking about their own experiences, and it's really cool because it's not just one person's perspective. It's like 7 people talking about their feelings, them feeling broke or them feeling misunderstood, or all the little nuances. It's a really like looking into a conversation that people are having. It's really empowering, one of my favorite reads. And lastly, a book that I guess is underrated because I love it dearly and like not enough people talk about it, is Color Me In by Natasha Diaz. This is a story about a girl who is mixed, so I kind of relate. I'm, you know, Cuban and black, so I definitely know what it feels like to be mixed and how do you identify, and people look at you differently because I obviously have different privileges than someone who is of a darker skin color. And this character definitely relates. She is Jewish and black. She's trying to figure herself out while not overstepping and talking about an experience that she has no relation to. Like, I can't walk up and be like, I get all black women's stories. Like, obviously not. I have a very different upbringing, but it doesn't mean, like, we don't have to compare or lessen an individual's voice just because you have a different experience. And I think this book really touches on that, where it's like, how can you be yourself while not like overstepping, but also aiding people and listening to people and growing. And I think it's so important, especially nowadays, because I feel like people don't know what the F they're doing half the time. They're like, let me yell about my feelings so that way I can get across what I need. And it's like, hey, your needs are important, but sometimes you gotta listen to others too. Equally as important, if I do say so myself. Well, that's it for today's video. I really love doing videos like this. It's really fun. I'm surprised by this list that there was so many that I hadn't read. I think there was only 2 books that I had never heard of, which excites me because, again, I know a lot of these platforms like Epic Reads will talk about really popular best-selling books. So it's important that sometimes we talk about some underrated things, and I'm happy to do so. And I'm surprised, again, so surprised about this list. I'm freaking out. Let me know if there's other lists that I should talk about, if you want any other videos from me. If you do like this format of video, I did also do something similar to this last year, or in 2020? I don't remember. I will link it here or below, where I review like over 60 books. So definitely check that out if you're interested in hearing more recommendations. I'm done with this video. My voice is hoarse. This took a lot of effort. I really hope you liked it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below this emoji so I know you are the real MVP. And yeah, I hope this video gave you a little bit more sunshine, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. God, I'm so tired. Talking is hard.